Hey folks, welcome to another Authortube video. Now, as full disclaimer, this particular video may ruffle some feathers. It might be controversial. You might have varying opinions on it, and you might tell me in the comments, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just giving you this from my perspective, and as a precursor as well, understand that I'm from sort of the old school version of independent publishing. Okay, I was self-publishing back actually when self-publishing was a big no-no in the industry, and stuck around with a lot of we call them the old guard, so to speak, old guys, old-fashioned, or ladies as well, compared to like the new publishing world that we live in now, the Kindle world, the one where anybody could write a book and throw it up on the internet, right? Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from the old school. So what I wanted to mention, or talk about rather, is beta readers, right? That's a new thing. Well, quasi new thing that's happening now. It's common for new writers to write a story, maybe do a draft or two, three, maybe hopefully at least three, and then handing it off to beta readers for feedback and potential edits. Okay, so you have your circle of, let's say, somewhere between 6 to 8 beta readers, and you give them all a copy of your book, and if indeed they do get around to reading it, then what you end up getting is you come back to 8 different versions of your book with various comments about, like, say, this part needs strengthening, or this romance is not working, or this part you didn't buy, or this part you erred in, or here's your punctuation is all screwed up, or all sorts of things, right? But the problem is these readers are not editors, right? What they're doing is they're just offering you opinion. And if you're market testing with like 6 to 8 people to try to make a good book, I mean, for the market that maybe that you're after, it's an extraordinarily small amount. But regardless, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make your book better, right? That's the idea. Okay, so I have a problem with that. I really do. And the reason is because, one, like I said, they're not editors, they're readers. Okay, so any form of editing skill that they're going to put forward is not going to be 100% accurate. They might be pretty good at English or whatever, but in the end, you're not going to get an edited, like, properly edited item. The second part is, I'm thinking, if you got 6 to 8 people telling you what's wrong with your story, and then you go in and you fix it, you make the romance better, you make this action scene more intense, or whatever it might be, right? Well, that was Bob's opinion. And then, Jane comes along and she says, well, you need to do this, you need to change that. So then you put in Jane's suggestions, and then Sam comes along and says, well, I fixed all this punctuation up for you. That was my contribution, so here you go. And then you got to look at what Sam did, and you got, well, is Sam right? Like, does he know his punctuation? Maybe, maybe not, right? So you got, basically in the end, you got all this input from all these other people into your manuscript. And at the end of it, whose story is it? That's my question, is whose story is it? I mean, maybe the nuts and bolts of the story is yours, but in terms of the writing of it, who did the writing? That's what I want to know. Because if you have input from 6 to 8 people and then put your name on the cover as if you're the sole author, I don't see any artistic integrity in that. Because you had help. You had people basically co-write the book with you in portions. And that's where part of the old school is just, I have to draw the line and say, like, no. Like, if you're going to have 6 to 8 people or more potentially help you on a book, well, then they got to get some, like, major accreditation in the book itself, like by name, even if you want to say by part, they help with this part, they help with that part. Because for you to put your name on the cover, it's dishonest. It's saying, I did this, me, and that's the idea with a book, right? You have a single author on the cover that, yeah, they did that. They made that story up. They wrote those words. And for you to do that and then have 68 people behind you, again, I don't know, man, that doesn't sit right with me personally. But if you're doing it, like, say, if you're doing beta reading as an exercise to learn the craft, well, then step 1 is your book and your writing skills are not ready for market. End of story, right? If you're needing help from outside to make something good for market, you need to work on the craft. And it takes time. And it's okay. Writing takes time. And I'll tell you a story very simply. I wrote my first book. I stand by the story, but the writing sucks, okay? So on my second book, what I ended up doing is I gave it to an editor. I paid her the funds for it. And when I got my stack of paper back, it was coated in red. Every single page loaded with red. She destroyed my book, like utterly destroyed it. And I felt like I wasn't even a writer because I suck so bad. But what came out of that was, after going through her notes, after taking the hits on the chin, so to speak, about my baby, and just grunting through, I learned a tremendous amount about the craft. And especially the bare bones basics, the skeleton, the main rules of fiction that have to be in place. And then there's the ones that you can bend, and of course the ones you can break. But in terms of the core stuff, I got schooled big time. And to me, that seems more like a better approach than going with beta readers. If you're looking to hone your craft, if you're looking to learn how to write a story, make it, say longish, but you don't have to necessarily hand over a whole book unless you really want to. But, have a decent chunk, a short story or a novelette, like say 15,000 words. So there's a decent amount to work with, right? And then you give it to a ruthless editor, like with no mercy. The person has no mercy. They don't care about your feelings. They're here to teach you. And give it to them and have them have at it. And then when you get it back, you wipe your tear, and then you look at all the different lessons. And I guarantee you, if you do it that way, your writing game will jump overnight. Big time. Huge time. But anyway, back to beta readers. Yeah, that's the main message, is I can't go with it. And the reason I can't go with it is because I don't want the input of 8 different people in my book. It's my book. It's not your book. It's not their book. I write for me, and I hope that people out there enjoy what I produce. I'm not going to please everybody, it's impossible, but hopefully there's other people like me out there who enjoy, it's like what Kevin Smith said this about his script. He wasn't sure if anybody would like Clerks, but then he remembered, what, if I like this, there's odds are there's at least one other person on the planet that will like it too. And that's the approach that I take to my own work is, what, I like this. I'll do my best to produce it properly. I'll have my editor do the editing portion, but then I'm going to give it out there. And then hopefully there's someone else like me, or a group of people like me, who will enjoy it as well. And that's I think would be a better approach, personally, than having beta readers teach you. Because again, they're not writers, they're readers. There's a difference, right? Any writer will tell you that, yes, writers are readers as well, but there's a difference between a reader who doesn't know how to write versus a writer who, So anyway, that's my opinion. I think beta readers isn't really a good idea for the sake of learning the craft, right? Or even just to enhance your book. Because again, who wrote it? If you're going to put your name on the cover, you got to put those other 8 names too. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the subject. You might find it controversial. You might find it upsetting. And I'm not sorry. The reason I'm not sorry is, again, I'm part of the old school. And I think if you're going to claim title to a piece of work, then it has to be you. It has to be you. It can't be other people. Again, unless you want to give them a byline as well. So that's my 2 cents on the subject. This video entry was prompted by a discussion on Facebook, a writers group I was a part of. They asked about beta reading, and I told the person, I said, do you want my honest opinion? I kind of gave that first, and then they said, yep. And I said, okay, sure. And actually quite a few people agreed with what I just said. And I'm not saying that as a point that this is super valid or I'm super great at knowing these things. This is more so to saying that other people hold the same view as well. Basically, in the end, if you want to learn the craft of writing, you do as Stephen King says. You write a lot, you read a lot. And when you're reading, right, not only do you read just for the story and have some fun, but at the same time, you're as a writer, if you're going in there to learn, you pick up fiction, nonfiction, doesn't matter. If you're going in there to learn, you're going to be paying attention to how things are put together. You're going to be paying attention to how the paragraphs are put together, how the pacing is done, how this person creates an intensely romantic moment, or how they create an intensely creepy moment. And you learn that way, right? You break it down as you're reading your story. And that's one way to learn the craft of writing, outside of some of the how-to books that are out there. But to try to get writing lessons, so to speak, because I think that's what you're doing with the beta readings. You're trying to get lessons from people who are just readers. It's not to disparage the reader, not at all. But when it comes to the mechanics of writing, you can't say just because you read a lot, you know how to write. It doesn't work that way. You have to do both, right? And we also have, and lastly, I'll finish with this, is we got to stop this whole capitalistic idea about writing in the industry, okay? Like, most writers I've spoken to write stuff, put it out, write stuff, put it out, write stuff, put it out, quality be damned. And I thought to myself, that's really weird, because if I'm an artist, do I publish every sketch and doodle that I make, right? If I'm a chef, I'm not going to give you every single thing that I create in the kitchen. I'm going to give you the best stuff that I create in the kitchen, right? Other stuff is maybe just for me to sample or me to experiment with, so it's that kind of idea. I don't know where we got this idea where whatever you write, we have to publish. It doesn't make sense. You're allowed to write just for you. You're allowed to do a writing exercise just for yourself. You're allowed to do a story or even a whole book of a way just to work on the craft, And yeah, maybe down the line you could pull it out, dust it off, and clean it up a bit and get it out there. But, in terms of doing it as an exercise, it's 100% fine. So, yeah, again, I don't think beta readers is a great idea. And again, it's because who wrote the book? And two, can we really trust these folks who are a small sampling of your target audience? So that's it. I think in the end, if you're going to hand out your book, I would hand out an ARC, right? An ARC, advanced reader's copy. That's what I would do. That's, get that out there. Ask the people, give me your honest review. Get honest reviews, wherever your book's going to be listed. And they could do it off the advanced reader copy instead and give their feedback that way. But in the meantime, the advanced reader copy, well, depending on the publisher, is usually towards the end of the book production's life, because after that point, it's already been sort of cleaned up as best as possible. It's not always perfectly edited, but it usually is pretty close. And in the end, yeah, that's what I would do, is send out an ARC and get the reviews that way. But at least that way you don't have their reviews influencing the book itself, the one that you were supposed to write. Because when you write it, when it's just you, the only other third party who's supposed to touch it is your editor. That's it. And when your editor edits, their job is to just spit shine. If they're coming back with you with all sorts of mistakes, then you need to work on your craft. But if they're coming back to you with actual proper edits, this comma goes here actually, and here's why, then that's different. Okay? So that's as far as an editor should go on a book. They shouldn't do the developmental edit. That's a whole other thing too. That's like beta reading it in a way. So anyway, I could go on forever about this. In the end, that's my opinion on beta readers. I don't think, again, it's not to disparage beta readers at all. It's not meant that way. It's purely meant to say, from a writer's point of view, who wrote the book? Was it you, or was it your beta readers? Up to you. Peace.